Autoline Daily is brought to you by Bridgestone, passion for excellence, and by Dow Automotive Systems, innovations for clean powertrain solutions.
This is Autoline Daily for March 29th, 2011, and now the news. And the news out of Japan is not getting any better. Bloomberg reports that Toyota says the recovery is going to take a long time and that the impact on certain models is going to be significant. Nissan says everything will be cleaned up by the end of the first quarter, but remember, Japanese companies operate on a March 31st fiscal cycle, meaning that the end of the first quarter for Nissan is not until the end of June. But a report from Deutsche Bank says production will not return to normal until October. It also says Japanese automakers are going to rack up big losses in the first half of their fiscal year. And all of this is going to ripple through the global auto industry, which will have a negative impact on global suppliers. Now for the latest on the alleged espionage scandal involving Renault. A private investigator who Renault had hired was arrested. He's the guy who charged the French automaker well over $400,000 for information suggesting 3 of its employees were selling secrets about electric cars to the Chinese. Earlier this month, a security official who worked for Renault was also arrested in connection with this fraud. When he isn't chairman of Ford, Bill Ford Jr. is investing in small startup companies with an investment firm he co-founded called Fontanalis Partners. According to the Detroit News, one of those companies is Parkmobile USA, which created a free service that allows you to pay a parking meter with your smartphone. The app will also alert you to let you know if the meter is about to run out. The company is also considering using its technology to help drivers locate parking spaces or let a driver know how many spaces are available in a parking garage. The service is available in about 30 U.S. cities. Bill Ford Jr. created the firm to invest in companies that help improve the mobility and transportation infrastructure. Last week, we reported that GM and Chrysler vehicles were being held hostage by a car hauling company. Now, Bloomberg reports Chrysler got back 700 of its vehicles from Allied Holdings. The automaker sued Allied in a Canadian court last week because the vehicles were being held in its Windsor, Ontario facility. And speaking of Canada, the Nissan Murano Crosscabriolet is one funky product. Who would have ever thought an automaker would introduce a drop-top crossover? Crazy talk! I'll bet the sales volumes on this thing are going to be tiny given its very different looks and nearly $50,000 starting price. Limiting its appeal even further, the Globe and Mail says that this drop-top two-door will not be sold in Canada. Evidently, Nissan of the North, that's my name, not theirs, looked at it and said, no thanks. If this is your kind of vehicle, the Murano Crosscabriolet should start showing up at dealerships next month, unless, of course, you are in Canada. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Keep that in mind the next time you're working on anything with wheels. One motorcycle racer may have learned this lesson the hard way. We found this video on Autoblog, but it comes courtesy of European TV network Eurosport. Here you can see 2 bikes duking it out during a race when suddenly the front runner's rear hub snaps, sending the wheel and tire flying off like a 50-pound frisbee. Luckily, the racer, Maxine Berger, doesn't appear to be injured from the fall. The motorcycle's paint job, on the other hand, probably did not fare quite as well, but it is kind of funny to watch. Hey, have you ever found out that you had an enemy in the workplace? Someone going to make your life as miserable as possible for you? How do you deal with something like that? Well, we'll get into that right after this.
Reducing exhaust emissions, aerified diesel particulate filters, high filtration, low back pressure, small package size, excellent durability. DowAerify.com.
Anne Doyle is a former executive at the Ford Motor Company and the author of the book Powering Up. She's got great advice for anyone trying to guide their career through all the pitfalls that you can encounter in a large corporation. She came into our studios to share some of that advice in what we are calling the aha moment. I'm talking right now with Anne Doyle, a former executive at the Ford Motor Company and the author of this book, Powering Up: How America's Women Achievers Become Leaders. And Anne, give us an example of an aha moment in your career that really gave you some insight and helped you out in your job.
I've had a lot of aha moments in my career where I've been tested. The one I want to share with you, John, is the whole idea about having an enemy, a professional enemy. And many of us...
What do you mean a professional enemy?
An enemy in the workforce, let's say. And we are all taught through all kinds of leadership development about working with people that you don't necessarily like or don't think the way you do. Those are all important skills. But it's a whole different thing when suddenly the light bulb goes on and you realize, wow, this person I'm really having trouble with, we're not going to solve this by going out and having a beer together. We are never going to, not only are we not going to be able to work well together, this is an actual enemy, somebody who really would like to bring me down. And when you realize that, I mean, that's an important aha moment. And then not only do you have to realize it, face it, but then you can't just passively not do anything about it, that you have to protect yourself. And sometimes you have to work with these people. And how do you protect yourself? Well, number one, you don't trust them. You pay attention. You realize they're always an enemy, no matter if they're smiling at you and seem to be saying all the right things. But also you have to understand that often they are trying to undermine you behind the scenes. And so you have to actively protect yourself from that by reinforcing, to people who could be potential allies, what you're doing and what's going on. And so I would just say that that's one of the biggest ones for me. And just realize sometimes there are people who are just going to be your enemies. You're never going to win them over, and protect yourself.
Do you keep that to yourself? Do you share that with other people at the workplace? How do you handle that?
I would absolutely keep it to myself. It's not the kind of thing where you really want people to know about this necessarily. I learned this lesson at Ford Motor Company.
The hard way.
The hard way. And I will say that I didn't particularly handle it very well. And I think that it was quite entertaining for other people to watch, the two of us. And eventually, the biggest, smartest thing that I did was to just cut with the public display of animosity and learn how to work together, but also just to remember that that's an enemy, but don't be naming names about it.
Well, Anne Doyle, thanks so much for sharing that aha moment with us.
My pleasure.
Anne Doyle's book, Powering Up, is now available online. Be sure to tune in to Autoline After Hours this Thursday when our guest will be Joel Piskowski. If you want to know where Ford is headed with its future exterior design in the Americas, here's your chance to ask the designer who's in charge of all that. And that is today's report on the top news in the global auto industry. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.